Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Trip of a Lifetime podcast with me, Celeste.
And me, Jasmine.
It's been a while since we recorded one of these podcasts. The 8th of August was the last time, which was about 7 months ago now, because we've both just started our first year of university. Same campus, just different courses. So we haven't really seen each other very much. So we've had that as our priority because this is very much a thing to do for fun in our free time. So obviously, not having recorded for 7 months, there's been a lot that's happened in the Doctor Who fandom since then. Like we've had the companion reveal, Millie Gibson, who I mean, she's older than you, but she's younger than me by about 5 months, and I still can't get over that. Like I feel so old. Um, what else? We've had the Doctor, the Shishi Gatwa's costume reveal. Um, the 60th anniversary specials have finished filming. They've actually started on series 14 now. We know that Kate Stewart is coming back for series 14, along with a couple new cast members, new characters, and there is a very heavy rumor as of right now that the first spin-off that they're going to come out with will be a unit spin-off starring Kate Stewart with possibly characters like Martha or Gwen showing up, or various other companions, which is really exciting. There's also been a really big rumor recently that Stephen Moffat might be writing one of the episodes of series 14, which I'm kind of in two minds about, because on the one hand he's a fantastic writer, on the other hand I kind of almost want someone new to come in. I mean, I'm sure there will be at least one, maybe two new people as well. But like, even if it's a returning writer that has maybe only done one episode before, like, give us someone who wasn't a previous showrunner. You know what I mean? What do you think?
I think it's really cool. Um, I don't really have many opinions about this. I kind of have a similar opinion in like same as you.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of Moffat writing an episode, I'm happy about that. Like I love Russell, but I mean like I would like to see another episode by Moffat because I do like his episodes personally. But that's just my personal preference.
Mm.
I do really like his writing style as well.
Yeah, I get that. Like, I mean, I have no problems with Steve Moffat coming back, but it's just, I'd like something new, if I was given the preference. But, like, I'm not knocking it if it is true. Trying to think, is there any other major news? I don't think there has been. I mean, we had the first teaser trailer that only features stuff from the first and a little bit of the third special. There's been no footage from the second special in that trailer at all. Um, Beep the Meep has been confirmed to actually be a part of that, the Wraith Warriors, because a lot of people seeing that on set and kind of um, matching like the costumes to those obscure comic panels kind of went, no, that can't be what Russell's actually doing, right? That's so obscure that even some of the most hardcore Doctor Who fans have not heard of this character. But no, Russell is doing that. Like, Beep the Meep is going to be a major character of at least one of the specials, which is certainly interesting. There's also, Russell pointed out, I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but there's a shot where a man walks into what is presumably Neil Patrick Harris's, toy shop place. And that man, a lot of us assumed that that was David Tennant, based on height and stuff. Apparently, that's a character we haven't seen yet that no one's picked up on. Um, and Russell seems to be implying that that character should be of some significance to the fans. So, God knows who that'll end up being. So yeah, I think that's about it. Do you have any other things to add to that section?
Firstly, I love Neil Patrick Harris. I'm so excited for him to be in an episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah, 'cause you're a big How I Met Your Mother fan, right?
Yes. Yes, and also he's been in other things such as like a series of unfortunate events, the series, which I absolutely loved. Um, I have a feeling, I don't know why. No evidence, by the way. Just a weird feeling that they're going to bring back the Master again, even though they probably won't. But like, I don't know, because if it's they're either going to bring back someone who we haven't seen in a while, or they're going to bring back the Master, because they do that every few seasons or so.
What, so you think Neil Patrick Harris is going to be the Master? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was talking more about the person. You saw.
Oh, what, the mysterious person? No, I don't think it's. I don't think it's the Master. I don't know who it is. Um, some people have been theorizing that it's like a younger version of Ian Chesterton. You know, one of the Doctor's first companions, based on kind of like hair color and build and stuff. Which fair enough. But it could be a new incarnation of a particular Time Lord or something. But I don't think it's a character we've seen recently. In regards to Neil Patrick Harris, he's actually worked with Russell before. He had a brief appearance in one of the episodes of It's a Sin, which is where they first kind of met, and so I'm assuming that's the reason why Russell was like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And Neil Patrick Harris, having worked with Russell and clearly respects his writing, was like, "You know what? Sure, why not?" Um, Anyway, we should probably get on to the actual episodes that we're going to be talking about, because we're about 6 minutes in and we haven't mentioned anything. So this episode is, of course, Tooth and Claw. It's series 2, episode 2, because are we counting Christmas Invasion as episode 0 of that season, or episode 1?
I personally count it as episode 0.
Yeah. I can't actually remember what I put it as. I think I might have put it as episode 1. I'll have to check that later. I'm gonna go for now with. Should we go episode 3 of season 2? Let's include it. Um, it was written by Russell T Davies, directed by Euros Lynn, and it first aired on the 22nd of April 2006. General thoughts.
Personally, I'm not really keen on this episode. However, I do like some of the themes that they have in this episode. I'm not going to spoil anything until we get down to it.
Mm.
But there are I love the royalty theme, and I also love the kind of like space and supernatural theme overall.
Mm-hmm.
And I love some of the jokes that they have in this episode. However, I'm not personally. I don't know why. I'm just not over keen on most of it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's kind of whenever I think of it, like in context of like the show in general, I always think of it as not a bad episode, but definitely not one of my favorites either. Like it's a solid story, but if I was going to choose a story to rewatch just on its own, this wouldn't be one of them. Also, apologies in advance if you hear any banging or crashing in the background, because we are currently recording this in Jasmine's accommodation. So like there are some other uni students that might be crashing and banging in the background. Yeah, I thought if we go to start with the opening, it's a bit. I don't know. I just when I think of Doctor Who, I don't think of monks doing martial arts. I'm gonna be honest. Like it just it. I don't know. It feels almost jarring, especially when you look at it from the rest of the episode as well. Because sure, the monks they're around, but you don't really see them display that kind of action in the rest of the episode. They're literally just standing outside, pretty much. I don't know. It feels odd. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're not wrong. I also feel like monks doing specifically martial arts in that kind of time frame also seems out of place. I know that could be a stylistic choice. However, it just seems very out of place for the time period as well.
Well, I didn't mean necessarily for the time period. I mean just Doctor Who's a show, because it's such a a martial arts movies are such a different genre to science fiction, especially like werewolves and horror and stuff. You don't normally see the two together. But even just in terms of like the direction and stuff, I don't know. It's just that first scene just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. And I don't know why.
No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
And also, again, from another stylistic point of view, aren't they wearing like colourful clothes?
Yeah.
Yeah, which also sticks out as well.
Yeah, I guess that's probably because at this point they've turned away. I mean, they literally say like the leader, the father or something. I don't know what his name is. but the leader of the group, the guy that does all the talking, he says that they've turned away from God and are instead worshipping the wolf. Almost the way he talks about it, he's almost like what's the word? Not reluctant, regretful. That's it. He's almost regretful that he's done that and that's what's happened, which I find really odd. It's almost as if like he's compelled to do it against his will, but he can't bring himself to fight it. It's like his conscience is warring against him. Although we're talking so much about him, he's such a minor character. Doesn't he like get killed off at one point? I can't remember.
I think so, yeah.
I think he gets killed off around the midpoint. I yeah. It's. I mean, it hasn't even been that long. I watched this episode like 3 days ago. Like it should still be in my mind, but it just isn't. But also at the start of the episode when we see um the Doctor and Rose the first time, you've got that stereotypical, oh, the TARDIS is landing in the wrong time period for where they're set. It's a recurring theme throughout the show. Like you see it in season one. I mean, most dramatically when Rose shows back up at her flat a year after she first left. I just love this kind of device, and I don't think we actually see it um towards the end of Moffat's era and in Chibnall's era. I don't think there's a ton of oh we got the wrong decade kind of thing. I'm not sure. I might be wrong on that, but as far as I can't actually think of another instance where that happens after, say, Clara leaves the TARDIS. There's also a brief. Doctor briefly name drops the Olympics, which actually shows up in. It is a part of a plot line of a future episode in the series, which I thought I'd mention that. Um, and then you've got David's Scottish accent, because contrary to what some people believe, this isn't actually his real Scottish accent. It's slightly over exaggerated. Because I mean, I feel like most people listening to this will know that David Tennant is Scottish. But I feel like a lot of the people watching him in Doctor Who at the time wouldn't have necessarily known that had they not maybe seen interviews with him, because I believe he actually chose to use a British accent. Like he didn't have to, but he wanted to do it, as far as I can tell. Oh, and then of course the Balamori reference, which is a bit of a throwback to our childhood. I don't think that CBB show is actually going anymore, but it was a really popular children's show on the BBC when we were younger.
Yeah, it used to play at lunchtime all the time.
Yeah, with all like the bright coloured houses and stuff.
Uh, I don't really have much for the beginning except for the fact that Rose and the Doctor, they're making like kind of like this bet that they can get the Queen to say "I'm not amused" when they meet her.
I'm gonna be honest, I hate this gag in this episode. It gets really annoying for me personally.
But then it also does show that sometimes the Doctor, specifically the 10th Doctor,
Mm.
he kind of is more dangerous because, like, later on in the show, there's people that are dying, and then he's still trying to get the Queen to say, "I am not amused."
Well, it's not. I don't think it's so much him at that point. It's more Rose, because he kind of just shakes his head at her at one point when she does it. Um, but I do get what you mean, though. I think he is enabling her slightly. He's just kind of he's not really telling her off. Anyway, the other thing in because there's a lot of foreshadowing in this episode. Russell is very clever at this one, even though it's quite a simple storyline. He does weave a lot into it. Like there's a line where Queen Victoria literally says in the first scene she appears that something's good. That like I think it's country air is good for the blood, which you know that links back later when she of course gets bitten by the werewolf and presumably gets that it gets transported into her DNA. And there's also the mention of wolves around these parts. And then once they get to the Torchwood estate, which we'll come back to in a minute, um, one of the first things the Doctor and Co come across is the telescope, which is, of course, it becomes a massive part of the third act, because that is literally how they defeat the werewolf. One thing I think we should discuss next is Queen Victoria herself, because it interests me. It intrigues me that Russell chose Queen Victoria for this story, and especially considering he's not a monarchist by any means. Like, he doesn't. Um, I don't think he's like a massive anti-monarchist, but he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever kind of thing towards them. But there's almost a kind of in this episode, almost worship of Queen Victoria, I think, in a way, which is interesting because like there are brief mentions of like the Koh-i-Noor, which I believe that's how you pronounce it, which is the diamonds that they use to defeat the werewolf, which famously was stolen by one of her um, what's the name, nobles from India, and was given to her, and it's still an argument today because it's in one of the crown jewels at the moment. Whether or not it should be given back to India, which I personally think it should be, but what do I know? Um, so, but not once is it ever kind of mentioned that she got it. Well, I think it is mentioned she got it from India, but it's such a quick comment. It's just brushed past. It's almost like kind of the because she's also referenced as the Empress, and how and then there's the Empire of the Wolf is a term that was used by the wolf because that's what he wanted for himself, or the being inside that man wanted for himself. And it's just that kind of aspect of Victorian England, the fact that Queen Victoria was the figurehead for the British Empire for a long, long time. It's I don't know. It's almost a bit dodgy that it's just so quickly brushed over. In my opinion, I mean, sure, you could argue I'm reading too much into this, but when you compare that to, say, King James, for example, he's not worshipped. He gets thrown under a lot of scrutiny, quite rightly, for being a witch hunter and things like that. And also for the colonization bit. But like Queen Victoria almost gets like a pass because I almost feel like because she's a woman and because we kind of view her as this, big figure in history. I don't know. That's just it was something that was occurring to me as I was watching. It's not really something I normally think about watching Doctor Who. And I guess maybe the reason why Russell didn't comment on it could be because Doctor Who, it's a family show, it's supposed to be a bit of escapism for the week. And, bringing up colonization and things is the exact opposite of escapism. And yet, it's not something that the Doctor Who shies away from in other episodes. So I'm just, you know, I just thought I'd bring it up because I didn't feel like I couldn't not bring it up.
In the final chase scene with the werewolf in
Mm.
the is it the castle?
Torchwood House.
Torchwood House. I was gonna be like this fancy estate place. The bit where I think there's a bit where yeah, they're in the room and then the wolf can't get in because of the rosemary in the walls.
Mistletoe.
Mistletoe. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah.
I was wondering if like mistletoe had any significance, like in terms of like properties and why.
I think the Doctor has like a really quick explanation in episode, which I think was something to do with like the chemicals within mistletoe, the plant. But honestly, I don't know enough about plants to say. But as far as I'm aware, I don't think mistletoe is a big part of werewolf um, folklore. So I don't think it's a way of defeating werewolves in mythology, which I think is why they're all so surprised because you get a mention of silver bullets briefly, but not once do anyone think, oh yeah, mistletoe. Um, there's the reference to Bad Wolf in the cellar when Rose is down there. The werewolf guy looks directly into her eyes and says there's something about the wolf about her, which obviously freaks her out massively. I tried to pinpoint. I mean, I should have done this, planned to do this beforehand, but I tried to pinpoint exactly when David switches back to the English accent, and I think it was when he realised Rose was missing from that dining room, and he goes off to find her. At least, I mean, I wasn't actually paying attention, but that was the first. to that specifically, but that was the first time that I definitely remembered him with an English accent. But if we're going back to the room upstairs, and they've just discovered that mistletoe stops the wolf, the way that sound is used in that scene is really good because, again, there are times where, I mean, arguably you kind of want sound design to be so effective that you don't notice it. But in that scene, like you actually, I guess it's to save partially on CGI and things, but the only presence, the reason why you know the wolf is there is because of like it growling and moving around outside the walls. Like you can't see it, but you know, like the characters, but you know it's there. And I'm currently in my course doing an audio drama module where we're learning to write audio, and obviously that's completely based on sound. And so just from that perspective, just how tension can be built. And then later on in that scene, at this point you're paying more attention to Rose, Doctor, and Queen Victoria, who are kind of having a three-way argument at that point. And in the background, Lord Robert? Was it Lord Robert? Sir Robert. That's it, sorry. Sir Robert. He literally comments that he can no longer hear the wolf. Which is, but like, because it's kind of in the background, you're not actually supposed to hear him almost, you're supposed to pay attention to the other characters more, but it's at that point where you're like, oh yeah, you can't hear the wolf. When exactly did we stop hearing the wolf? It's kind of, it brings up those questions, which I think are so clever. Um, anyway, so what did you think of CGI in this episode?
I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was amazing. But I think it was like decent for the time and the budget.
Mm.
What? Because when was this? It was like 2007,
Six,
6.
I
Right.
think.
Or
Yeah,
yeah,
2006.
2006. So I did think that the CGI was pretty good for the time, and
Mm.
also the fact that obviously they didn't have a massive budget either.
Yeah.
And really, it's also really good for TV shows as well, because usually big movies would have, amazing CGI.
Yeah.
I did think it was really good, and I also love the technique where to say budget they use sound instead of more CGI,
Yeah.
because then they can make the moments that the wolf does appear on screen
More effective. And realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Although I would say the transformation scene where we actually see him transform with the wolf, the visual effects there was a little bit ropey. I almost feel like, because they did cut away at one point and kind of just hit the sounds, that what they could have done was just keep it as a sound, and so you see him, and then you see the moon kind of moonlight shines in, and then you hear all these sounds and you see their faces, and then it reveals the wolf. I feel like that might have been slightly more effective, because as with most horror films, it's almost what you can't see that's scarier than what you can actually see. The one thing that I did say we would come back to is the foundation of Torchwood, because I mean, I feel like most Doctor Who fans would know by now is that Torchwood was originally a code name used for Doctor Who before, in official documents, before they'd actually revived it when it was still in development, and then Russell liked the name so much that he ended up turning it into the Torchwood Institute, which then got its own spin-off, which we will cover the first season of that. I'm not sure if it'll be directly after this season of once we finish the season of Doctor Who, whether we've got Sarah Jane Adventures first. I can't remember which way round I put it. But we will be covering Torchwood at some point on this podcast, definitely. Yes, so it's been revealed to the audience, because we don't really know how Torchwood started. We've only kind of had a few small Easter eggs in the previous season, and then in this season. Big one being in Christmas Invasion, when Harriet Jones calls up Torchwood and says, "Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to know about you, but laser this spaceship and destroy it," kind of thing. But we get the reveal that it was actually created by Queen Victoria, which is actually referenced in the two-part finale of this season, with the whole "I did this for Queen and Country" stuff with Yvonne Hartman. I'm not going to spoil the context of that scene if you haven't seen it. And obviously then she's referencing the late Queen Elizabeth II at this point, but it is, referencing that this is a royal establishment. There are a couple of things I've got left to discuss. Maybe the use of actual hard facts, like that Prince Albert did cut down the Koh-i-Noor, and he kept going back up to Scotland to keep getting it cut and cut, but he was never happy with it, and then using that and spinning it into a Doctor episode and giving it mythology. The other being the comment that Queen Victoria says to the Doctor and Rose just after she's knighted them, when she's in the midst of banishing them. She says, how much longer do you think you can survive this terrible life?" And it's a theme that recurs not just through this season, and not just through every other season of this show, but the whole universe as a whole. Like, it's a big theme in Torchwood, that seeing these aliens and being with these people, that would be the Doctor or Jack or arguably even Sarah Jane to some extent, is that these people, seeing these aliens and defeating them with these people changes you, and not necessarily for the better either. It's that darkness that I'd forgotten how dark this episode ended in a way. But I love that idea that, because I think a lot of people may know by now, if you've listened to these other episodes, that I love it when Doctor Who gets dark. Whether it's the Doctor, whether it's the Master, whoever, like, just making it so raw and dangerous. I don't want to get coddled these stories. I want to see the lasting implications of these events. Do you have anything else to add?
I was just gonna add to what you were saying that in a
Yeah.
way, it kind of adds some realism, but not like to a real extent. It has consequences.
Mm.
And I forgot what I was just gonna say. It's something along that, a similar line to that.
Yeah, because I guess it's the first instance in this season, because it does come up again and again, that you can tell that something's going to happen to one of them, most likely to Rose, at some point during this season, if not by the end of it. That this relationship that the Doctor and Rose kind of are skirting around, that this kind of will they won't they relationship isn't going to end happily. They're not going to be able to stay together. I mean, you even get, I think it's in this episode as well. Is it this episode, or is it one of the? No, it's the next episode. Sorry, where you get how he's going on about how she can spend all the rest of her life with him, but he can't spend the rest of his life with her. She's gonna age and die, and he's gonna have to live with that fact. It's just another instance of foreshadowing, but obviously we'll get to that more next episode.
Uh, this is a bit irrelevant, but it's to do with the episode.
Sure.
I really did like the imagery of the diamond and the telescope, because I personally I just really like the theme of space, and it kind of gave me Jules Verne vibes.
Yeah.
I can't really put my finger on why it gave me Jules Verne vibes, but it just did.
I guess because Jules Verne's books were written in the Victorian era, and there's a lot about inventions and things in his books. So I guess it's like the Victorian technology and solving things with what they had available then.
But then it also kind of reminded me of The Time Machine by, is it George Orwell?
H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells. I always get those two mixed up. I'm sorry. But basically, it reminded me of that, because in that book he kind of describes the future, and then how people have turned into these weird creatures, or different, like they've changed over time.
It kind of links back to the parting of the ways, when Jackie and Mickey and Rose are all in that chip shop just before Rose breaks open the console of the TARDIS, and they're kind of discussing how Rose has changed, and how one day Rose will be this woman, she won't be recognizable if she keeps going on like this. And it's that whole thing about as I mentioned earlier, the Doctor changes people, and not for the better. I mean, it's a recurring theme throughout Russell's era, and arguably into Moffat's era to some extent as well. Like, you get, there's the scene in series 4 where Donna comments about Martha and how she's now he turned her from a doctor into a soldier. I mean, sure, she's still a doctor. That's what her role is at unit, but she's walking and talking like a soldier, even if she doesn't do any of the killing herself.
Going back to like you said, where like you like it when the Doctor gets dark, or
Yeah.
Doctor Who in general gets dark.
Mm.
It kind of adds some, in a way, depth to the Doctor.
Yeah.
Because he's not just this light loving, I'm going to save everyone kind of person, because sometimes he doesn't, and sometimes he will snap like normal people. You get angry, you get annoyed around things, you know. So, you know, he might want revenge at some point, and that is a natural emotion to have.
But there's also giving that darkness to that character without making it feel artificial, because there are some episodes, you know, whether it's the two that come to mind are The Beast Below and The Haunting of Villa Duodati. Because in both those instances, you've got Matt Smith's Doctor with Amy and talking about the Star World. He gets really angry, and it's only at this point his second episode in the season, and was the Doctor in general. It just doesn't feel right for his development. It always feels like this episode should have been a bit later on in the season for that speech to make sense. And then you've got the 13th Doctor lecturing the fam about, you know, how she can't, you know, whether she should sacrifice Lord Shelley or whether she should let or whether she should, I think it's the Siberium, she should do something with the Siberium. It's been a while since I watched that episode. But she gets really angry at them out of almost nowhere, saying how, you know, sometimes this team structure isn't a flat surface, sometimes it's a pyramid and I'm at the top, which could have been really impactful, but it just, given her character development through the 2 seasons we'd seen her in so far, it just didn't feel quite right, you know? Whereas I think Russell with Tennant and Eccleston, there is definitely, you know, scenes where like those speeches do feel justified, or there's times like the speech in the Zygon inversion where Peter Capaldi's having a go at Bonnie, who's posing as Clara, and that speech is one of the best speeches in Doctor Who. Even if the episode itself is kind of meh, and it's just, you know, those moments, they feel they kind of have to be earned. You kind of have to build up to them. And I'm sure we'll get to that at some point later in the season, if not next season. So what would you rate this episode?
This is difficult. I would say either a 6 or a 7.
Mm-hmm.
I did just look at your rating, but I'm not trying to copy yours because I can't decide because I'm usually either not too generous. I'm either too harsh on all the episodes.
Yeah.
Or if it's a very specific episode, I'm too gentle, and I'm like,
too
yes,
generous.
too generous, not gentle.
Yeah,
You know what I
I know,
meant.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 because I feel like the stakes and the tension are really good, but it's almost the storyline itself almost feels too simple for me to give it any more. Like, it's not a standout episode. It's not bad, but it's not spectacular.
See, I agree with you there because I did like some of the writing. However, it's one of those episodes that's in the middle. It's all right.
Mm.
However, it is a decently forgettable episode.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you don't really have too much monster factor, but I did like the kind of like the idea that they were trying to make it sort of horror-y. I know it's off-brand for Doctor Who.
Well, not necessarily. I feel like it does. Horror and Doctor Who do go hand in hand. I just think this might be the first. No, actually, I was about to say this is the first instance in the New Who, but we've had the Empty Child, Doctor Dances. I'm talking absolute rubbish. But it is one of the first instances, and it is the first kind of instance in New Who where we get the Doctor facing off against a classic monster, because we get vampires later on, we get a mummy later on, but this is like the first, because in classic Who, you know, I mean, we literally get it mentioned next episode that Sarah Jane has encountered the Loch Ness monster. So like, it's not as if Doctor Who hasn't encountered classic monsters in its episodes before in its stories. It's the first time in modern Who. Although I say that again, and still Doctor Dances, they're technically zombies, but they're just not called zombies and they're not traditional zombies. So yeah, all in all, it's a fun episode, an enjoyable one. I don't, when seeing it, that if I'm doing a rewatch, I'm not sitting there going, "Oh God, not this episode," like I am gonna do with Fear Her later on this season. But oh God, I hate it. It's one of my least favorite Doctor episodes ever. Spoiler alert for my opinion in in a few weeks' time when we record that. So I'm not dreading this episode when I rewatch it. I'm just it's not one that I'm like, oh yes, I love this one.
Oh, you wait until we do a specific two-parter that I hate.
So,
It's the Cyberman one.
well, this series, do
Yeah,
you hate it? I don't mind
I
it. I
just
think it's alright.
okay. So I like some of the plot points
Sure.
in terms of like I'm not gonna spoil it. In terms of some of the
Yeah.
areas,
No, I know what
I'm
you
just
mean.
gonna
Like
like
sci-fi
wiggle my
stuff.
eyebrows at you
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
However, I do feel like it does drag on a bit personally.
Fair enough. Like, I don't think it's my favourite two-parter of the series, even, but I enjoy it. Anyway, yeah. So that was all today. I hope to see you next time when we review School Reunion. Bye.
Bye.